things like I've been doing recently, trying to update the website, update the podcast and all. New hot tag graphic right now, for instance, and all too. And of course, another great way for you to chime in with your thoughts is the Discord server. So hop on over to that and join the community over there. Chat it up on those channels and all that good stuff. As I said, we're going to be giving you an update on AEW stuff, but we have plenty other hot tags in the meantime to get around to. So let's go back to SummerSlam. Or I'm looking at the SummerSlam card right now. Let's go back to SmackDown, a different word that starts with S. I'm so tired. And let's talk about a huge thing that went down. Unfortunately, now it's like old news because it's Friday and it's back to Friday again. But Rhea Ripley's injury is bad enough that they felt the need to just create an interim champion situation. And I guess she's not going to be out long enough for them to justify stripping her of the title, or at least they don't think that she would be at this point, but not able to return at SummerSlam. And they hadn't built anything up for her, so it seemed like it was something that she would be skipping out on anyway. But instead of doing Charlotte Flair versus Jade Cargill and it's for nothing, or if it's Tiffany Stratton versus Blake Monroe and it's the Women's United States title, instead they're going to crown an interim WWE Women's Champion through a ladder match. And we're going to get some more qualifiers tonight on SmackDown. Charlotte Flair against Nia Jax being one of them. But that situation is, of course, interesting because they very rarely ever do interim champions. And when they do, normally the interim champion ends up beating the lineal champion and becoming the lineal champion. So whoever wins this title at SummerSlam very well could be the champion heading into even like WrestleMania season for all we know. If at the very least, the immediate following situation out of SummerSlam. So we know that Jade Cargill's in the mix. Obviously, Charlotte Flair is a very easy option when it comes to assuming that she's probably going to beat Nia Jax tonight. And then Tiffany Stratton qualified. Chelsea Green and Kiana James are going to be in another qualifier. And I don't think that they've announced what the other qualifier is. So that one's a little bit up in the air. But generally speaking, interim champion and all that, I think it's okay. I think it's good if they are able to work around it. I think it's sometimes a little bit weird that they don't just strip the champion. But how you guys feel about this? Yay or nay on the interim title?
I think it's a positive if they know Ripley's going to be back relatively soon. I think the interesting discussions that have come up since this, basically being like, hey, how come Ripley doesn't have to forfeit when almost anyone in that position would, really make you think, because this is one of the reasons why I think they should just go back to the stupid 30 days rule, because it's easy. It's even if you're going to be out for a month and a week, if you miss that cutoff, just forfeit the belt, and that way people can move on. But, multi-woman ladder match at SummerSlam, it should be a lot of fun and creates an opportunity that didn't exist beforehand.
I'm largely in favour of interim champions. I know certain people are very adamantly against them, but I think that they, when used correctly, are more effective than just stripping the champion of the title belt, because, they could pretty much effectively work in the same way, but I feel like it's always a more effective and more logical point of view that there's an interim champion and there's a current champion, and then those two fight to determine who the actual champion is, rather than the person loses the title and then has to, in theory, should just get a title shot straight away, but they don't always go down that route depending on the situation. And I just think that this is the more logical approach to take. I wouldn't go with this route if Rhea Ripley is going to be back in like a month or so, though, because I feel like to have a interim champions work, they need to be champion for a little while before the like the big unification match happens, because you need to establish them as a champion. If it's going to be a case that someone's crowned at SummerSlam and then by the next pay-per-view Rhea Ripley's back and is fighting for the title, it's like, what's the point? You might as well just not have had Rhea Ripley wrestle on the show and just kept her as the champion, and use this five-way ladder match to crown her number one contender instead.
Such a
So
pain this year.
I think she'd have to be out for at least a couple of months to really establish this
Messed up for
real threat for her title. So yeah, overall, like, favour of this approach, as long as the length of time that she's out is suitably long enough. In terms of who is going to be the interim champion, I mean, you just have to. You would at least assume, or you'd hope. I guess assume is probably too far a word for this current iteration of the WWE creative process, but you would hope that they had someone in mind for Rhea Ripley to fight at SummerSlam, if not necessarily to have her lose the title to, but someone that was going to fight. So you might as well just make them the interim champion, get them ready to fight Rhea at a certain point.
Makes sense.
The two people they have currently listed, it'd be very underwhelming if it was one of those two, because those are the two former champions.
I could see him doing it.
Yeah, like Stratton's already the women's U.S. champion. There's no point in giving her the belt. And Jade just had it. So that's just resetting it. But they typically do that. Like, Seth Rollins gets injured. You need to crown a new WWE champion for the World Heavyweight title. Who do you have? Jey Uso versus CM Punk, and it's CM Punk. He just wins the title back. So I'm like, I wouldn't say so much nervous, because I don't have anything riding on this other than just being bored. But like, if they give it back to Jade, it's just gonna be like, I don't want to watch Jade lose to Rhea again, and I don't want to watch Jade beat Rhea. So I'm really hoping that this is like, surprise, Chelsea Green's champion or something.
Yeah.
I mean, she hasn't even qualified yet, but she's at least in the running, and I'm very surprised that JC Jane is not.
Yeah, I think I'm very surprised that JC Jane is the epitome of the way she's been booked so far. Like, it's very strange to me that she's missing out on this, unless the fifth contender will be determined by a last chance match with all the former losers.
Nia Jax gets a third chance to get that.
Can we please just put it on Charlotte? Yeah. I understand why that idea in theory makes people upset, but when you're having conversations, when the fan base is having conversations left and right about how, the women have really fallen off, this current
Bailey leave
generation of women is kind of just drinking the Kool-Aid, they're not fighting hard enough. You know what really fixed that is if the girls that are there that still have stroke, like Charlotte, Rhea, Becky, just act like main eventers. Just do the Roman Reigns. It's okay to be a little selfish. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to act like a top star. I understand everybody wants to have the presentation of, I'm giving back, and I'm the... Just be the top star that you are, especially at a time right now where I would argue the industry and women's wrestling in general needs it. Just go back to being presented as main event level women's wrestlers. And I think Charlotte's the one to do that.
Maybe. But she could win anytime.
Out of the Stratton, Cargill, and assuming Flair option, ignoring Chelsea Green and Kiata James and whoever the other TBD ends up being, I would hope that it would go to Flair, because, I'm not going to hope that it goes to Nia. I'm not going to hope that it goes to Jade. I'm not going to hope that it goes to Stratton. And realistically, I thought that it was probably going to be Flair versus Ripley at SummerSlam anyway. And then they started the whole Cargill thing and all, and so that it was like, maybe it'll be a triple threat or something. But it kind of seems like that was something that felt natural, and there's a history between Flair and Ripley, so if they want to run that back again, they want to have Flair as the interim champion, Ripley comes back, and it's like, well, I picked up the slack when you were gone, and they end up having another match, whatever, you can get a match out of that pretty easily. So, even though I would be hoping that it would be like a Chelsea Green, Flair is probably the pick that I would go with, just to make things kind of easier. But man, it would be interesting if it's just sort of, out of nowhere Chelsea wins,
I love Chelsea Green, but I'm super tired of, have either of the women's titles been defended since Mania?
I don't think so.
There was the one Rhea and Jade rematch, but outside of that, no. Just put the thing on Charlotte and let her,
and let her defend it instead.
Well, no, but I would rather her defend it. But
I'm sure you would. I'm sure you would have rather than Liv and Rhea defend it, but they don't do that either. So it's not your choice. It's not your choice whether they defend it or not. It's the company's choice.
Which is weird that they didn't even compensate by having Sol Ruka and Tiffany Stratton defend their mid card titles all that much. They don't defend it in their, so it's
they're doing a thing right now where champions aren't defending a lot at all.
It feels like a company edict of we can't do title matches. And maybe it's their strategy about being well, if we don't do title matches, unless it's the United States title. Well, you know what? Even that, Trick Williams is I'm not going to do the U.S. Open Challenge. And then Penta was I'm going to challenge, I'm going to fight for this belt every single week. And then it was a 3-week thing.
Stopped doing that.
Stopped. It's the whole company was just kind of yeah, we don't want to do title matches anymore.
And it's all it serves is to make the wrestlers look like shit. Especially a babyface like Trick going, oh, and fuck you, I'm not working. It's this really weird thing they're doing where they're just that's how you perceive us as big stars. We're just not going to work.
Yeah, not a fan of that. But yeah, tonight, 2 more qualifiers. Maybe we'll learn what the other qualifier ends up being too. Not the best situation going into this, that they would end up having to do an interim title thing, but they've had worse scenarios than that, that's for sure. Let's see. Let's bounce to, let's talk about this. WrestleMania next year. It's going to be in Saudi Arabia. We all know that. We all, boo, hate it. And one of the talking points that we had been mentioning, as soon as this was announced and all, was what are they going to do with literally everything else that's revolving around WrestleMania? So now we know their game plan is that they're not going to do an NXT show in Saudi Arabia. Instead, they're going to do Stand and Deliver and a AAA show called Eternal Glory. It's going to be at the Infosys Theater or something. And it's going to be, in America instead of being in Saudi Arabia. The way that I wrote it down in this is trying to mitigate the problem of WrestleMania being in Saudi Arabia. Very much they're you can get all the extras for WrestleMania outside of that, which doesn't account for, WWE World. It doesn't account for the fact that it's not WrestleMania. So the idea that they would stick around to stay in the United States for the other extra stuff, you got to assume that they think, oh, well, everybody's still going to do their usual thing and the city is going to be loving it because they're still going to have all these other shows or whatever. I still think that Tony Khan should book something and just wipe the floor with them. As much as I don't, want to punish the NXT and the AAA people for doing that, they're going to do their jobs, they're going to do their things. I think that this is kind of lame that they're doing this, and I've not been endorsing the Saudi Arabia thing at all from the beginning. I wish that they would stop doing that in every single capacity, but yeah, this is very much TKO WWE of we'll give you that, be happy about it. We'll act like New Orleans getting Money in the Bank is the same as getting WrestleMania. We'll act like you getting the, you don't get the main course, but you get all the side dishes for WrestleMania. That's good enough. Fuck you, And, AAA's fun, NXT's fun, but it's not Mania. And it's not going to be.
The the interesting part to me is we know that these events will take place in April. We don't know when. And as it stands, we don't even know when Mania is taking place. Now, my theory is they're not trying to do a 2-night WrestleMania. They're going to do a 1 night in Saudi and leave it at that. But we've also seen, like, this year with Stand and Deliver, it was on its own. Didn't even run it Mania weekend.
Yeah.
So there could
Which
be a
I
thing
liked
like
better.
that as well. I believe it was Meltzer, Callum, correct me if I'm wrong, who reported that AEW was actually considering running the New York market that weekend. Maybe this is a case of somebody got wind of something. I still think AEW should do something. I think that's the move. I've talked about this with every NXT show. I feel bad for them, but you know, AEW has a chance here, and I think they should do something really special.
Yeah, they don't really have much to say on this sort of topic. Like, it's fine for NXT and AAA to put a show on in at the same sort of like vicinity of the WrestleMania thing, because that's what they've always done. And if they're doing it to potentially either prevent AEW or anything else from entering that area to do their own show and sort of thing, that's what WWE's MO has been for the last X number of years, pretty much since AEW started. So like, there's not really. I feel like we always just repeat the same stuff when it comes to this. So I don't really want to draw myself into this conversation anymore. I'm pretty over it.
I mean, they clearly counter program. So if there was something that they like caught wind of, like Rob was saying, that could very well be exactly what they did it for. That could just flat out be they're more motivated for that than they are for anything else. And I wouldn't put it past them at this point. And, this company's very much just no soul, all numbers, garbage like that at this point. Really hate the idea that it makes you miss Vince McMahon.
Still plenty of cities around the world for AEW to run, and I hope they do.
Let's start talking names. And not just the redemption name like we were getting into the other day. We got some ring names, some trademarks, some people getting rebranded, some different things and all. And this is all going to tie into some of the discussion from some of the TV talk, even from NXT and all. So before I do that, let me just double check that there's anything on Raw for us to talk about, because Raw had Division beat Javon Evans and Dragon Lee. They did more of the Alpha Academy stuff. If I remember correctly, like almost everything this week was pretty much just like, we're just going to hit the same beats as we've been doing. Danhausen and the Judgment Day doing their stuff. There's like really not much happening on Monday Night Raw or whatever. But on NXT, something for us to talk about. So let's work our way through that system. WWE filed trademarks for, I'm assuming this is pronounced Bakusai, but I mean, we still don't even know if it's Naruku or Naraku. There's Kiyoki in all caps, and those two names could potentially be Hiromu Takahashi's new name, which we still had the possibility of the Nox Raijin character that they had trademarked, which seems more and more like it was just an alternative to Naruku. If it is, we'll find out when we do. If it doesn't, then it'll just be some random person on Evolve or something. It'll just be like, hey, you know what? Actually, this Dave Jones is now Bakusai or something. But another person on Evolve finally got a name. Megan Walker had been going by Kylie Quinn on at least social media and some dark matches and stuff, but they specifically did not name her for like 3 weeks in a row or something on Evolve. And then they still didn't name her this week, but she changed all her social media stuff to Alex Brooks Alix, Brooks without an E, which, you know, you want to bring back the superstar or porn star thing. It's like Megan Walker, Kylie Quinn, Alex Brooks. They all sound the same. Zelina Vega, now going by Zelina with an X. One way around it. Santos Escobar is now Romeo Malverde. Totally different switch up from that. I thought he was probably just going to go back to El Hijo del Fantasma, but guess not. And, you know, their names. There's nothing all that special for me to talk about before we get into the NXT stuff.
I think at least the big talking point was that Andrade was in Zelina's like video, because you know how everybody does the fun little video packages announcing their new gimmicks, and you could tell a lot of people didn't actually look at the video because they were just instantly like, oh, so Zelina and Tony End are going over there, and it's just like, no, the point of Zelina's video was she was going through the different eras of her career, and obviously Andrade was a part of that. Yeah, cool names. And we'll see what they do with them.
I know Calvin doesn't really necessarily care.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
those are names that you said.
Yeah, but a real big talking point to get into name-wise, and this one we can dive a little bit deeper on. To run through the NXT side of things, Robert Stone had been teasing throughout the night, and you know, here and there, that he was on the phone with somebody, and you know, with NXT, it's such a fucking chaotic mess a lot of the times that a little plot thread like that gets lost for me. And I'm trying to track as much of this stuff as possible, but they have this really annoying habit, and they do it more in NXT than they do anywhere else, where they'll do like nothing for 5 segments in a row. So it'll be like 27 minutes or something of nothing to report on. And then they'll hit you with like a backstage segment where they'll be like, oh, so-and-so wants a match next week. Well, you know what? It's actually this type of match, and actually this person's going to have a match for the week after. Then that match is going to be announced for a pay-per-view. By the way, we're announcing a pay-per-view, and by the way, the championship is whatever. And you're just like, oh, shit. Okay, so you forgot about everything, and then you rushed it all in. So it's hard to keep track of some of those things. I did not realize that there was a running thread of this whole he's talking on the phone to somebody or whatever, because I was sitting there going, all right, Natty wants to do this, Jada Parker, and Daryl Sharma is talking about the Naruku street fight, and Thea Hale is trying to get attention, and nobody's paying attention to her and all this. Ended up paying off in the main event, but in the meantime, we had a bunch of things that do not matter. Let's be perfectly honest. Like, Saquon Sugars has a 6-man tag and he loses. Okay, whatever. Throughout the night, Thea Hale was seemingly like going to be cast aside by everybody, and she kind of screwed over Natty with the Jada Parker thing. So, you know, we got a little bit of story there. Keanu Carver's just doing his thing. It's a lot of the same old stuff. Danhausen pops up, and he gives Shiloh Hill a replacement tooth in exchange for some human monies, which Shiloh Hill doesn't have, but he says, well, do you take Bitcoin? Well, what's Bitcoin? Oh, it's a cryptocurrency. And Danhausen's like, oh, cryptocurrency. I like it. I'll take that. And I'm like, this is stupid. I like it. This is dumb that the guy that collects teeth is going to do that. But it's dumb in the fun way. That's actually kind of like, yeah, why wouldn't the guy with the teeth give the guy that's missing the tooth something? So I thought that was funny. And, you know, you're going through the rest of the episode. And as I said, I'm not realizing that there's some kind of through line about Robert Stone setting up something or whatever. They're too busy talking about Bronco Nima can't wrestle at both Heat Wave and AAA because he's a part of the Los Perros del Mal, and you got Sean Spears pulling an Eddie Guerrero to beat Nico Vance by DQ, and blah, blah, blah. All this kind of stuff goes around. The episode basically is about to end, and Tony D'Angelo retains over Naruku and Araku, whatever. And then some song hits, and I'm thinking, I don't recognize that song. Then again, in WWE, how many songs do you really recognize anymore? They're all kind of bland. But everybody starts popping like crazy, and I'm like, what's this? And then I see it's Mike Santana in the crowd. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. He finally, went, and he's now part of the NXT roster. And then the bigger talking point comes around. Vic Joseph does the thing again. It's not his fault. He's instructed to do this. Oh, look who that is. We know who that is. Look who's crossing the line. That's the former TNA World Champion. Things are getting nasty around here. That's the realist number one contender, whatever. And I'm like, fuck me. They're going to rename Mike Santana. Santana's big enough in my mind that, like, you shouldn't rename Santana. And he's just going to go by some dumb name. Like, it's going to be like, hey, the era of Mike Santana is gone, and now I'm like Santiago, whatever. Or, like, it's just going to be another boring variation name. And it's so stupid. Just be Mike Santana.
I think it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't just so egregious on commentary where they're just like, hey, you know who that is. We can't see it, but the
Somebody
Glamour's
evil is here.
Somebody evil is here. Like, and again, it's not Vic Joseph's fault. I think he's fantastic. But it's just really dumb. It's extra dumb because he's wrestled as Mike Santana on NXT.
Like 5 times.
What you're announcing is, well, he signed here now, so we have to rename him. And, I mean, like, sure, like Ricky Saints isn't a bad rebranding. It's whatever. I doubt Santana, if he does get renamed, I doubt it'll be anything egregiously like, wow, you named him Davey Smith, you're not going to do that. But it's just weird. And then inevitably one of the social media teams will screw up and then name him and then have to fix it. It happened with Saints. It happened with Santana over on Facebook, where they were like, Mike Santana's here.
It probably happened with Mariah May.
It happens with every debut. And, also cool that he's there. I'm expecting him to do pretty well in NXT. And just name him when he arrives, also. Stop milking it for another week or whatever. Just name him when he arrives.
Yep, I mean, I think that this is just standard practice now. It doesn't matter unless you're like someone who is massively huge in AEW. You're not gonna get the treatment of be able to keep your name from one side to the other. Or if you previously wrestled for WWE under that name, then I guess that's fine. But I mean, I wouldn't be acting like Santana is above the likes of Ricky Saints, or is probably the highest example of it. Because Ricky Saints was a regular feature on AEW TV. Santana obviously he was in AEW for a long time as well, but as a tag team guy, and he got his big break and to be the top main event guy in TNA. But that's just TNA, and so I feel like this is. I don't say it's certainly not understandable because there's zero point of doing it other than they want to own the name of every single person that works for them. And so if you just go along that logic, then that's just what they're going to do. So if it's stupid, it doesn't help him, it doesn't help the company, it doesn't help anybody to change his name, other than the fact that he can never use that name again once they inevitably release him in 3-4 years' time. But yeah, that's just the way it's going to go. And then he'll just go back to being Mike Santana, what he was known on the Indies and in TNA and in AEW. So it won't really, I don't think it will negatively affect him, but it certainly doesn't help to have him try and start from scratch here. I mean, the funny thing would be if they decide to use this opportunity to circumvent expectations, and like do the build up of like, oh, you know who that guy is, he's just crossed the line, all of this stuff, and then he just comes out next week and he is just referred to as Mike Santana, and it's like, see, we don't always we just trick you, we don't always change the names.
I'd be down for that. I mean, just keep it as Mike Santana and troll us a little bit. I'd rather that than for them to be like, we need you to go out there and you need to cut the same fucking promo that everybody does, where it's like, I'm here with, I don't want to say Casey Catanzaro, so I'm just going to say I'm here with, what was your new ring name? And then she could go, I'm going to be Katana Chance because the era of Casey Catanzaro is over and I'm like a swift like a katana and I take my chances or